have the amazing privilege of listening to and learning from some of the industry's most cutting-edge leaders in this dynamic panel, leveraging technology for standout on-site services and in-unit add-ons. Thank you so much, Brilliant, for sponsoring this session. I will now hand it over to Jeff Koch, Chief Innovation Officer and Chief Information Officer at Mill Creek Residential, and Cindy Clare, Chief Operating Officer at Bell Partners. Welcome, Jeff and Cindy.
Hey, thank you all. Appreciate the time.
So I guess, Jeff, I'll start. I'm Cindy Clare. As Christine said, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Bell Partners. We manage about 65,000 units across the country. We're an investment and management firm. About 30% of what we manage we own, and the remainder is third-party management. And with that, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Koch. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and Information Officer for Mill Creek Residential. Mill Creek started in 2011, was spun off from Trammell Crow. We have about now just about $7 billion in assets under management, about 22,000 units operating today, another 13,000 plus in the pipeline. And we just started our new single family rental business as well, where we're building to rent and have a couple thousand homes in the pipeline there as well. And so Mill Creek as a whole, we're a fully integrated developer, general contractor, property manager, and asset manager. So I'll be speaking a lot of the experience that funnels across all of those verticals to reach what really happens with our end residents and the customers. So Cindy, I think we'll start on artificial intelligence, right? So I know you guys are doing some stuff with AI and bots, and I really want to dive deeper into why, what are the metrics around that? What are you guys seeing as the benefits that are really helping residents and helping y'all?
So, you're exactly right. We're doing a lot with AI. We started beginning of last year, we were going to pilot, and obviously then the world blew up with the pandemic, and we decided we needed those tools sooner. So we rolled them out to our entire portfolio. And we used a lead management AI tool as well as the bots on our website. And what we saw was a 15% lift in leasing, even in the midst of the pandemic last year. We also saw about an 80% conversion ratio to tours now in the first quarter from the lead management to and the bots. In addition, there was a 22% increase in email volume that we've seen across the board. Our bots greet about 500,000 visitors on our websites. Wow. and have about 85,000 unique conversations with prospects, who then convert about 87% of those convert into visits. With our AI tour on the lead management, what we have found is that we are seeing, as I said, a lot more leasing and a lot more follow-up. They followed up with 70,000 follow-ups a month. So think about that in terms of, it's a lot, 70,000 in a month. And our teams just don't have the time to do that live when they're dealing with everything else at the property. So we have found those to be very efficient. In addition, we've taken it one step further and we've put AI tools on our software. So much like the bots that we have for our websites, we have them on our software to remind our teams what they need to do, whether that's through Workday or Yardi or other tools. It's enabled us to have kind of a follow-up on our training by having those bots on our sites.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're using it internally and externally, and both are driving productivity gains, which I think is what we're looking for here, but really conversion rates. And I think that's the most interesting thing to see, the conversion rates from before and after you're doing that. Have you rolled this out across your portfolio now, or is this one segment of your portfolio, or where's this at?
It's across our portfolio. We've done it everywhere. And I think you're exactly right. What it's enabled us to do is meet the customer where they want to be met. And that's at whatever time of day or night that they want answers to questions. And it's made our teams more productive, and obviously has improved our leasing, as well as the ability for our teams to then, when people do come in face to face, meet with them and meet their needs. And even with the training on the internal side, the more our teams are trained and the better they're trained, the better they are with the customer. So again, it boils down to that customer experience and improving that.
I think the other thing that's really unique about that, especially when you're able to roll it out across a portfolio, is brand control, right?
Correct.
By you having it at every single asset, every single community or building, you're able to control that brand, that experience from one customer to the next. People relocate, right? And they're going to be looking to stay with a
Correct.
property they understand, they know. And so I think that's a huge advantage and benefit.
Well, and
You
I
know?
think, for us, the advantage, is that our clients have bought into it because again, we can control it on our Bell-owned assets. But more importantly, we've been able to show the benefits to our third-party clients, and so they're using it as well. So it does give us more control.
Yeah. And I think the advantage is it takes that first part of the conversation, can direct it, can lead them through a process. And if there ever needs to be an offload to a human through that prospecting cycle, I'm sure you have some sort of offload cycle that allows them to jump from prospect side.
Absolutely. Well, and what I would tell you though is that particularly on the lead management side, a lot of times each of our lead AIs have names, and prospects will come in asking for them by name because
That's
in many
interesting.
cases they do not realize they've been talking to an AI tool. But I do think, and you think about as you have and we have lease ups, but particularly as you develop so much, you can't afford to miss a prospect.
Right.
And so having those tools that can make sure you don't miss prospects is critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very interesting. I like where you guys are going with that. I've seen some advances in that industry that are now coming up with it's almost like the deep fake technology where it's a person's face on the screen now that does the AI
Yes.
chat conversation with you. So yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. We're
Yeah.
not quite there, but it does
Yeah.
make a big difference. And I think that again, it allows people to get their needs met. When you think about people that are moving across the country in the different time zones and so forth, where they're coming home after work, it's an ability to meet those people when they want answers to their questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things here that relates to that for me is kind of the people first idea here, right? And so when I think about AI and bots and our strategy at Mill Creek, it's a lot of people first. How do we make sure our residents have the right lifestyle that they're looking for moving into one of our communities and living in a home there, right? We want them to have that brand experience. We want that to come across it. And so I look at it through a couple different lenses. So I didn't describe this in my intro, but so I own technology for Mill Creek, right? And the background of what we do on the front end and the back end with our customers, but I also run our ESG practice. And so all of our environmental, social, and governance strategies get developed for my group, and then we span it out through the organization to put those in place, right? So it's really important for us that we're constantly thinking about the resident wellness side of it. And these chatbots really help through that process of simplifying their life, accelerating the time for them to rent, getting in the door faster for scheduling, right? And so we look at that as well as to how do we then provide that into our strategies and what we're trying to do. And we're doing a lot of things on the amenity space that I think tie to that on the back end, which is the self-touring side, right? And accelerating that program. So we rolled out self-touring early on in the pandemic. And that was a really interesting process to do. We went with a very low tech solution, right? Get the fob in someone's hand, let them tour through with a map. And we saw a pretty good conversion rate at about 60% conversion rate of those tours. And we wanted to see how can we make that better? What do we need to do to enhance the experiences? So we started piloting, more technology type packages that tie directly into the entire early chatbot feature set into that. And so we've been piloting those and seeing some good feedback from it. But I think what we noticed through this side of things was don't take it too far. Don't go too far with the technology, right? It needs to still be people focused. And when you take things too far, sometimes it's ahead of where people want to be at. And so, but the mobile credentials, having something on your phone that makes it really easy to get into the building, wherever that guest entry system may be, and then going through using wayfinding, using the GPS on their phone to be able to tell them where they are in the building, where they need to go next, where the unit is that they're trying to go visit, has really been a benefit to some of our programs. But taking that outside of that as well is looking at it from what I call the digital foundation, and making sure your building is really lit to enable all these services down the road. And so a big focus as ours has been getting that digital foundation in, because it has twofold. One, it enables us from an operational standpoint to be able to put all these programs in place for the resident. But two, it actually improves the resident's lifestyle, right? So going forward with these bulk internet type programs where they have seamless internet connectivity from their home through to the fitness center, to the common area, to the package area, to the entire building's campus, even the parking garage is lit with Wi-Fi. And that's been a big change for residents, being able to have that seamless connectivity across the building, and the access control piece to that as well, that we have moved away from one system for each of these different things, but that it's a fully integrated system that allows really seamless access to be able to do package lockers, to be able to do package rooms, to make their life flowing through the building really simple. And so that's been an interesting exploration to that space, because we're actually seeing it tie back to revenue. We're seeing it tie back to the economics of the deal, and make deals today that their margins have gotten a little bit tighter because some of the construction costs that are happening today,
Right.
that this margin has made the deal a little bit more accretive to us. But at the same time, it's providing a real benefit to the resident of we're able to offer them internet at a better quality service at a lower rate than they can go get on the market themselves, which has been really, really beneficial. So I think that's interesting.
So I think one of the things you're talking about, it reminds me of bulk cable, except a little different, because we know that people love or hate their cable providers. The
Yep.
big question for you is when you do the bulk Wi-Fi, making sure you have enough bandwidth, because as we know, the residents, if they don't get the bandwidth, they're going to blame you guys instead of the provider. So how do you make sure that you've got the bandwidth available? And so far, how has that worked in the buildings where you've done it?
Yeah, I think the big thing on the bandwidth is making sure that we can guarantee rates, both synchronous, so upload speed and download speed. We're trying to put a gig in per home, typically is what we're doing when we're doing these deals. And so it's fast, it's a lot, right? And that's a mathematical exercise we're doing with the providers on how much is the back end pipe that can do that and control that, right? And at the same time, does the technology itself that you have in the building support that? Do you have the right type of cabling? Certain cabling can't go that fast, right?
Right.
So you have to have the right type of cabling. A fiber backbone needs to be in place. We're even looking at fiber all the way into units.
Wow.
And so, trying to make sure at least we have the pathways open to be able to pull through what's necessary for future. But typically what we do is a fiber backbone and then Cat6 to the units. And that seems to be the most economical path forward so far, but with an extra pull there if we ever do want to pull fiber all the way to the unit. And then, making sure the contract really specifies these speeds and terms, I think is going to be important. But I know we're getting some questions.
I was just going to say, we've got some questions on the bots. So what form is the follow-up from the bots? Email, but also text. We have found that you can do both email and text with them. There is some testing going on, kind of what you were talking about, Jeff, where it can also be by phone. We have not really done that yet, but we will probably test that once it gets out a little more defined. Another question was on the experience or information on integrating AI with the affordable Section 8 world. I think that you can certainly do it. It's really using your software and doing the integrations. A lot of what Jeff has talked about. We work very closely with our IT team to make sure that all of these softwares can integrate, because the key is making it not only easy for the user, but also for your site teams, because if it doesn't integrate well, it will create problems. So I think depending on the software system you're using on the affordable side, you can probably look at that. And do we have any AI for maintenance systems or security? So we are looking at now some mobile maintenance for our site teams. We have not gotten to the AI point, but we are starting to try to do more on the app side, and making it a little more seamless and integrating, just like you're talking about, Jeff, from a resident standpoint, doing the same thing on the maintenance side. It's probably the last bastion of where we still do a lot of things manually.
Yeah.
And moving to more technology, I think, is going to make a difference.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of affordability in our portfolio, and anything we're doing on the rest of the building is applied to those affordable units. And so it again comes back to, can you integrate it in those settings with the software that you're using for the artificial intelligence? I will say on the maintenance systems though, there's a lot there that's happening. So we have two programs: energy management and water management. And so like in our water management program, we've been piloting 5 communities using behavioral analytics on the water throughput of a line to detect leaks. And so one of the things that helps is preventative maintenance. It helps determine, hey, your water heater, something's wrong with it, or the throughput to this unit isn't accurate. And so you may open up a service ticket for that. So still early stages to really get that defined further. But we've been diving a lot deeper on the security side of things. So security cameras and tying artificial intelligence to certain aspects of it, of just looking at it. We haven't deployed this at any of our communities yet, but there's new technologies out there that you can recognize, repeat offenders and be able to put that into the system to detect for that. Or, hey, we're in the middle of construction and we want to know, is someone on the property that isn't supposed to be there? Right? And let's detect an alert on that. So we're looking at different use case scenarios for how you would apply that. But the big caution on the video surveillance side of it is privacy, right?
Exactly.
So we're very, very concerned about data privacy and not overstepping bounds of what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and making sure that's fully disclosed, fully transparent to both our residents and prospects and others, so that we follow all rules and legislation as well. So it's an interesting topic.
I was going to say, I think more and more as we look at all of the tools that are out there, we now have to look at the data privacy laws that go along with it. Even you think about the Nest doorbells with the video capability, and if those videos can look at other residents' doors besides just the resident that has the installation, you could potentially have a privacy issue. So I agree with Jeff. I think there's lots of opportunity out there, but you have to navigate through what technology will be a benefit and what technology could potentially open you up to data privacy issues.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's talk a little bit about the trends that are out there and what's to stay and not stay. And, a lot of stuff was very disruptive with the pandemic coming in. I think it also accelerated some things.
It definitely did.
But over time, we're going to see things fade out and we're going to see things that are here to stay. So from your perspective, Cindy, what do you think is here to stay and go away?
So I think, you mentioned like the self-guided tours. And did you do some virtual leasing as well during the pandemic? Because I know we certainly did.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that the AI tools that we've seen, I think the virtual leasing and the self-guided tours will also stay. You mentioned you were using it, Jeff, but do you really think it's going to replace, quote unquote, our leasing teams? And I think you and I both said no, but I do think that exactly, you still need those people. Yep. But I do think what it allows is, again, to meet the customer where they want to be met. So a perfect example is you're in a busy leasing office and someone walks in and says, I only have 30 minutes. And because of your technology, you can allow them to go and do a self-guided tour and do that very quickly because the leasing person has an appointment, or the virtual because they don't live close by and they want to at least take a look. So I do think those tools will stay in place. But I also think if you look at the numbers, you've obviously seen in-person tours grow back to kind of normal again. But it has not eliminated the virtual or the self-guided, nor has eliminated a lot of the upfront work people are doing with the AI tools and the bots. So I think those things are here to stay.
Yeah. I'd add to that on the self-guided tours and the people side of it. The people help keep your brand in place, right? And they really add that customer centric element that's really important to it. So you're never going to get rid of people 100%. At least we don't want to, right? Maybe you can.
Correct.
Technically,
maybe you can, but
if that was your brand and that's what you wanted to do, you could.
Sure.
We don't want to, right? But our question and thesis that we look at is, how is it saving their time to be focused on what we originally wanted them to be doing, right? Which is leasing, right?
Correct.
And so can we get some of this other stuff that they get busy doing off their plate so they can be more focused there? So maybe you don't reduce a whole head count, but you reduce like 30% of an FTE, right? Because they're no longer having to do this other stuff because of preventative maintenance or whatever it is. And so then we're able to have them focus on the leasing role itself, right? And navigating that. I think the second thesis that I'm looking at is on service, right? Is if you have a bunch of communities near each other, and we call our properties communities, but if you have a bunch of properties near each other, is there a way to service them from one central service team that goes and delivers it to each, or do you need independent service teams, right? And the power of artificial intelligence tied with the preventative analytics may provide some benefit there. And so we're looking at this in some of those locations where that's a possibility, that you can have a hub team that then services multiple different communities. But you got to factor in travel time, you got to factor in all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot still to unpack and uncover, but I think there are tools there to enable those type of things that just add a better service element to your business on that side as well.
And I agree. I think the density gives you a lot of choices, not only on the maintenance side, but you could potentially see that on the leasing side. I also agree that I don't see you reducing full-time people, but it may help you, particularly you think about smaller properties where you can't be quite as efficient. And if you could take your Sundays, for example, if the property is highly occupied and it's self-guided tours only, or I think there are lots of options out there. But it will never eliminate. Again, you could, but from our standpoint, I think you need the people. They build the rapport, they build the relationships, and our business is a people business.
And I think that saving a day a week where it's only self-guided tours only recharges your team, which ties to your own wellness and retention strategies and all those type of things, right? So there's benefits to that for sure.
It's focus on the customer. To your point, the more we can give our teams tools that help them, the more they have time to spend on those relationships and making the customer experience better.
Yeah. I think one of the trends I wanted to touch on of, is it here to stay or is it going to be fleeting with the pandemic, is indoor air quality. I think a lot of people have had many conversations around this with their ESG groups, with their investors, with their residents, with everyone, right? And a lot of people were like, well, if we put in indoor air quality and we do some sort of monitoring, will the residents pay more for that, right? Or if we put in something into their unit that filters the air differently, will they pay more for that? They're trying to take it towards that revenue vehicle. And I think a lot of what we've seen in the conversations we've had has shown that while there is some science tied to that, it's not as concrete as other elements, right? So like, why not just upgrade the air filters from a MERV 8 to a MERV 13, which blocks certain strands like COVID-19, right? And therefore you just have better filtration into the building, and you do more with allowing windows to be opened and outside air to come in. Things that are a little bit more simpler to attain than trying to put in this whole monitoring solution that you're not going to guarantee anyways. Because I can't say, you can't. I mean, you can't be liable for that, right?
Exactly. It's kind of when we talk about our entry systems and so forth, where, we can't guarantee. All we can do is mitigate risk. We're not going to be able to completely eliminate it. And a lot of it depends on how people use the systems that we put in place. So it reminds me of sustainability when we talk about how much will people pay for, sustainable things. And yes, people like them. And I think we've learned that they will pay for some of it, but not all of it. And really the benefit is it makes us more efficient, and it makes our expenses more efficient when we are doing more efficient buildings, which ultimately makes people happier, which means we're able to renew them. So there's a trickle down effect, but to assign a dollar amount to, well, if I put in this, air filtration system, it's going to get me X dollars in rent. I think, to your point, it would be tough to do.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think that's one of the things that will be fleeting with time.
Yes.
And we'll see that. I agree with you on your assessment of self-touring and those type of systems. I think a big one we're still have a gap on is package management.
Yes.
I think certain solutions have been brought to market that are okay, but I think they're like band-aids, right? I don't think they're the end all. This is the solution that solves the problem of how we manage packages coming into the community, right? I think it still requires too much people's input to make it successful, meaning that, a package delivery driver shows up with 15 packages. He has the top one, and he knows that if he scans in just one package, he gets access through the door to put it into the package room, but he doesn't have to scan the other 14. And so it requires someone on the leasing staff or maintenance staff or someone else to come and say, okay, what do we have here? Let's scan these into the system so it notifies the residents, right?
Right.
And so is there a better way to do this? And I sat on a panel the other day with one of the chip manufacturers that goes into all these IoT devices, right? And I told them, I don't have the time to go create this, but I want someone else to create it for us. And it's a way that way back when the product is put in the box, some sort of a chip or barcode or RFID scanner is on that, and it scans it all the way through the process. And the second it shows up on the site, it's recognized by the Wi-Fi, Z-Wave systems, whatever, that notifies then the resident that it's here, or it allows it to go all the way through the access control system to the elevator to the resident's door, whichever route we choose to take, right?
Right.
Something like that really enhances the future. And I don't think we're there yet today. So I think we have a big gap still in streamlining that system.
We definitely do. And even for those of us, most of us have adopted package lockers, which certainly has helped tremendously. But let's be honest, with the pandemic, even the amount of package lockers we have aren't enough to handle the volume of packages that are now coming through.
Yep.
And so what are those, and you're now seeing options to do it offsite, where the packages go to a central and they're delivered to the property with the resident letting the deliver service know when they'll be there to get the package. So I think that anything we can do from a technology standpoint to help streamline that process, I agree. I'm not the person to do it, but I do think that's still a gap. And, you talk about something that's not going away. Delivery is not going away. And I think the pandemic, again, accelerated that even further, even if it wasn't already. And, as we look at how does that work now with groceries and Instacart and all of the things that are out there, what does that do for what are our customers going to expect? And they're going to expect that stuff's going to come delivered and be cold or hot or whatever it may need to be. And our teams, we don't want our teams being the delivery person.
Yeah, absolutely. So knowing where we're at with the country starting to open back up, right, in various markets, right, and the fact that more people are working from home and they're trying to leverage these amenities to benefit their work life and their home life, what are y'all doing differently? Are you doing anything in that space, trying to understand the market and think about how do you satisfy those needs of the hybrid workplace?
Absolutely. I think that, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about looking at the Wi-Fi. I think that's going to be a big one. But it's also, how do we look at our spaces a little differently? One, I think as developers, we were on this micro, and we are not developers, but we manage a lot of lease up properties, and our developers, a lot of them have been we're on the micro units, particularly in the urban centers. And while I don't think that smaller units go away, I think micro units are going to be a little less appealing right now if you've just spent 15 months in 450 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think looking at your space a little differently, and particularly if there is going to be more work from home, how do you build the spaces in the units to accommodate that? But also looking at your spaces, pods and so forth, for people to work in your amenity spaces. So I think the flexibility of our amenity spaces, but critically the Wi-Fi piece, as you were talking about, Jeff, I think is going to become an even bigger piece of it. More so if you think about how people are using that Wi-Fi today. Cable is not, if you're young, and even those of us now that have discovered Netflix and all the others, we don't need cable. We just need streaming services. And so that's more bandwidth that, and again, I think all of those, play into it, and that bandwidth and the ability to use that bandwidth and bring something affordable is going to be critical as we move forward.
Yeah, I would just add to that really quickly. I think we're looking at it as, space as a service in some locations, right, where the amenity is, and instead of putting in necessarily hard physical rooms, more of the pods that are
Yeah.
soundproof and stuff, because video conferencing has become more prevalent across the board, but also just how their own homes are set up. Does it have desk space? Does it have standalone space? Does it have balconies with air flowing through? All those things I think are things to be thinking about in the future here, that are all the amenities that people can leverage going forward. And technology has an element in each one of those.
Yeah, it's looking at flexible space differently now and how we're going to use it moving forward in both the units and the amenities. So I totally agree.
Yeah, I think we are running out of time here.
I think we are. So we'll turn it back over to Christine.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Cindy, for your insights. I just love how, even though you're talking about technology, it really goes back to the residents and how you put them first. So thank you so much for being with us today. Next, we will have a presentation on furthering diversity and inclusion. And we'll hear more about how to make multifamily an attractive career path like technology. And I want to put a plug in for our annual fall event, which will be in person in Las Vegas, September 13th to 15th. You can register now online at mfeconference.com. And we currently have a special Memorial Day offer using Honor, HONOR, to get $200 off the total registration cost. So please go to mfeconference.com to sign up. And then before the next session, we have a break. So please be back in 15 minutes at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.